You usually know exactly where you stand when you're dealing with, like, a system failure.
Right, there's an expectation of a clear error log.
Exactly. You run the compiler, it throws a syntax error on line 42, and you just point at it and say, well, there it is. It's broken.
It's binary. I mean, it's totally identifiable.
Yeah, you fix the syntax, you run it again, easy. But then, and this is what we're getting into today, you step out of your IDE, step away from the terminal, and you walk into the world of international corporate interviewing.
Which is a completely different beast.
It really is.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that neat little error log is just a wall of static. Because you've got the technical chops, right? You can write beautiful code in your sleep.
You know your stack inside and out.
Yeah, but now you are facing your first major international IT interview, and it's in English.
Which fundamentally changes the rules of engagement, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. Because knowing how to build the architecture is really only half the battle.
Right. The other half is sitting across from this panel of total strangers, communicating in a second language and, convincing them that you are the specific person they should hire.
So let's unpack this. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive today. We're looking at linguistic guides, cultural strategy notes, and this highly detailed real-world case study dialogue.
That's a great stack.
It is. And we're going to extract the core insights to help you, the listener, master the professional communication you need to actually land that job.
Because reading through these materials, it's abundantly clear that this isn't just about memorizing a vocabulary list.
No, not at all. The central challenge here is decoding the mindset of Western corporate culture. We have to figure out how to translate your brilliant technical skills into brilliant English communication, especially when all the pressure is on you.
Right. It's about moving beyond grammar and moving into strategy. That's the necessary shift. And before we even get to the mechanics of how to answer an interview question, the sources actually force us to look at the physical and emotional elephant in the room.
Which is just the sheer panic of doing this in a second language.
Exactly.
So we have this incredible case study in our sources that illustrates this perfectly. It's a dialogue between two professionals. We have Mark, who is a highly talented developer, solid technical skills, and then Alex, who is an experienced HR and career coach.
Right. Alex has worked extensively with major multinational tech companies.
Yeah, so he knows his stuff. And Mark makes this confession right at the start of their session. He says, honestly, I'm terrified. My technical skills are solid, but when it comes to talking about my experience in English, I totally freeze up.
What's fascinating there is the specific linguistic choice Mark makes.
How so?
Well, he doesn't just say he's like nervous or a bit worried. He goes straight to terrified.
Yeah, it's a really heavy word.
It is. It's a powerful emotional adjective. And in conversational English, using a strong, precise word like that actually sounds much more authentic than just defaulting to, I am scared.
It conveys this visceral, almost paralyzing level of fear.
Exactly. And then he pairs that emotion with the phrasal verb, freeze up. To freeze up is to enter that involuntary physical and mental state where anxiety essentially short-circuits your ability to recall vocabulary.
You become a deer in the headlights.
Totally. It is a highly relatable state for anyone who has ever tried to communicate complex ideas under immense pressure, especially in a language they're still mastering.
Reading that part of the dialogue, I immediately thought of this in technical terms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the feeling of freezing up is basically a buffer overflow in your cognitive system.
Oh, I like that. Walk me through that parallel.
Okay, so think about the brain as the processor, right? Normally, it handles the input fine. The interviewer asks you a question about a recent project. Your brain processes it, retrieves the data from your memory, translates it into English, and outputs the speech.
It's a smooth, continuous loop.
Exactly. But then the anxiety hits. The fear of making a grammatical mistake, the pressure of the job being on the line, the intimidating senior interview panel. It's just too much sensory and emotional data flooding the input buffer all at once.
And the buffer overflows.
Yeah, the working memory gets corrupted, and the whole cognitive system just locks up. You freeze. I mean, you literally crash.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize it. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, validating that system crash is the absolute first step to preventing it.
Right.
In the case study, Alex, the coach, he doesn't tell Mark to just toughen up or get over it. He immediately normalizes the feeling. He tells him that freezing up is completely normal.
Which, hearing that from an industry veteran, has to be a massive relief.
Immense relief. Because the strategy here isn't to put on a brave face and pretend the anxiety doesn't exist. It's not about ignoring the conditions that cause the buffer overflow.
So what is it about then?
It's about understanding that there are specific linguistic tools and cultural frameworks you can rely on. These frameworks act as like a reboot sequence for your brain.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, you don't have to rely on raw, spontaneous processing power in the moment. You can lean entirely on structure.
That structural reliance is just so key. But once you push past that initial freeze, what do you actually say? Because digging into these strategy notes, I realize the language barrier is really only half the problem.
Right, the other half is cultural.
Yeah, this massive cultural barrier regarding how we even talk about our own work.
This raises a really important point about the culture of self-presentation. In a lot of international tech hubs, particularly in US and European corporate culture, there is this fundamental concept called self-marketing.
Selling yourself, which, for a lot of developers, feels incredibly unnatural.
Oh, it goes completely against the grain for many. Alex tells Mark in our sources that if he wants to get his foot in the door at a major multinational tech company organizations operating on the scale of like an EPAM or something similar, he has to actively learn to sell his achievements.
He can't just recite a list of duties from his resume.
Exactly. He can't just read the textbook description of his job.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources provide this very concrete side-by-side example of this shift. They point out that a candidate might instinctively say, "We did the project."
Right.
But the notes insist you must shift your language to say, "I developed the architecture that sped up loading by 20%.
The transition from the collective we to the individual I.
Yeah, but I need to push back on this a bit, though. To me, and I think to a lot of our listeners who build software every day, isn't sitting in an interview constantly saying, "I did this and I built that." Isn't that borderline arrogant?
That's a very common reaction.
Because IT is inherently a team sport. You've got front-end engineers, back-end engineers, QA testers, product managers. Nobody builds a massive enterprise platform in a vacuum.
True.
So if you sit there and take all the credit with I statements, won't a Western interviewer just assume you're not a team player or that you have a massive ego?
And that is the exact tension that trips up so many brilliant international candidates. It's a fundamental cultural divide.
How so?
Well, in many CIS cultures, and frankly in a lot of cultures globally, modesty is the default professional setting. The collective we is deeply valued over the individual I.
Yeah, you're taught that letting your work speak for itself is the most professional route.
Exactly. The code should speak for itself. But in Western corporate culture, the paradigm is entirely different. Claiming your specific piece of the puzzle isn't viewed as arrogance at all. It is viewed as factual accuracy.
Factual accuracy. Okay, explain that.
Look at it from the hiring manager's perspective. They already know you didn't build the entire enterprise system alone. They are fully aware that software development is collaborative.
Right.
But they aren't interviewing your whole team. They are interviewing you. So if you only use the pronoun we saying, "We deployed the application," or "We migrated the database," the interviewer is left completely in the dark.
Oh, I see. Did you write the core migration logic, or did you just review the pull requests?
Exactly. Or did you just attend the stand-up meetings and watch someone else do it? The we creates ambiguity, whereas the I statement provides strict accountability.
It shows you clearly understand your distinct value within that larger team.
Precisely. Saying, "I developed the architecture," tells them exactly what your hands touched. Modesty, in this highly specific interview context, actually obscures your data.
That makes a lot of sense.
Self-marketing isn't about boasting. It's about providing unambiguous data about your specific technical ROI, your return on investment for the company.
So it's not this performance of "I am the greatest coder in the world." It's stating a verifiable fact.
Yeah.
Like, I was the specific function that caused this specific output.
You're clarifying your exact variable in the equation.
Wow, okay. You're giving them the precise data points they need to make a hiring decision.
Yes.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means you have to, rewire your instinct to deflect praise. You have to become comfortable taking ownership out loud.
Which is hard, but necessary.
But that introduces a new problem.
Mhm.
If you know you need to sell your individual achievements, how do you do that without just ramble?
Oh, the technical tangent.
Yeah, because if an interviewer asked me how I built an architecture, I could easily go off on a highly technical tangent about database optimization strategies for 45 minutes.
Which is a very common trap, especially for passionate technical professionals. You get lost in the weeds.
Right.
And this is precisely why HR professionals in international companies rely heavily on a structured framework to evaluate candidate responses. It's called the STAR format.
STAR. Situation, task, action, result.
It is the absolute gold standard of behavioral interviewing.
Our sources emphasize this heavily. They say that when you tell your story, regardless of the technical details, it must end with a clear result. The R in STAR is non-negotiable.
Because the result is the proof of your value. The situation and the task, they just set the scene. They explain the problem the business was facing.
Right, the context.
Then the action is the technical execution, what you specifically did, remembering to use those individual I statements we just talked about.
Got it.
But the result is the actual business value you generated. And this connects directly to one of the most vital corporate buzzwords you will encounter in Western business English, which is the verb deliver.
Deliver. Yes. Let's look closely at how this word is used. In the dialogue, Mark realizes he needs to step up his communication game, and he tells Alex, so I just need to bring my A game and show them I can deliver under pressure.
Yes.
And if you look at almost any major IT job description today, ability to deliver results under pressure is practically a copy-paste requirement.
It is ubiquitous across the industry.
I have to say, though, the word deliver has always felt a bit strange to me in a software context.
Why is that?
Well, when I hear deliver, my brain immediately goes to pizza. Like, did you deliver the pepperoni to apartment 4B?
Right.
Why is corporate culture so uniquely obsessed with this specific verb? Why not just say, I did the job, or I finished writing the code? What does deliver signal that those other phrases just don't?
Your pizza analogy actually captures the essence of it perfectly.
Really?
Yeah, think about the dynamics of pizza delivery. The hungry customer waiting at home, they don't care if there was terrible traffic on the way.
No, they don't.
They don't care if it started pouring rain or if the delivery driver got a flat tire and had to put on a spare. The only metric of success is that a hot pizza arrived at their door within the promised 30 minutes.
The obstacles are irrelevant to the end consumer. They just want the product.
Exactly. And in the corporate world, delivering implies that exact same relentless focus on the outcome. It isn't just about showing up and doing a series of tasks.
It's about the finish line.
Right. It's about fulfilling promises and bringing something of tangible value across that finish line, regardless of the internal roadblocks. If you sit in an interview and simply say, I did the job, it implies a static, passive checklist.
You clocked in, you typed some code, you clocked out.
It doesn't tell a story of overcoming anything. But delivering results implies forward motion. It implies that you encountered unexpected bugs, you dealt with scope creep from the product team, you navigated impossibly tight deadlines, and you still managed to push functional code to production successfully.
Wow. So if we tie that back to the STAR method, the situation, task, and action parts are the journey. They're the traffic, the rainstorm, the flat tire.
Exactly.
But the result is handing over the hot pizza. Ending your story with a concrete result proves to the interviewer that you actually delivered.
You're signaling that you are a closer. You don't just write theoretical code, you deliver actual business solutions when the pressure is on.
That represents a massive shift in how you present yourself.
Hmm.
I mean, we've established the mental reboot sequence to handle the anxiety. We're dropping the collective modesty and embracing the I statement for self-marketing.
Yes.
And we are structuring our narratives with the STAR method to prove we can deliver the pizza no matter what.
You are building a highly effective communication toolkit.
But then, and this is where things get really intense, you find yourself sitting in the actual interview.
Right.
You have your STAR stories perfectly rehearsed, you are feeling confident, and then the interviewer looks down at your resume, looks back up, and throws a massive, completely unexpected curveball question at you.
The dreaded curveball. It happens in almost every senior-level interview.
Something you didn't prepare for, something that isn't on your mental outline.
Right.
And suddenly, that input buffer starts to overflow all over again.
Yep.
How do you stop yourself from freezing up in that critical, unscripted moment?
This is where the strategy notes offer some highly tactical advice. And once again, it requires understanding a profound cultural difference. But this time, it's regarding the concept of silence.
Just sitting quietly in the room.
Yes. In many CIS cultures, if an interviewer asks a complex question and you sit in silence for like 5, 6, or 7 seconds, it feels like a catastrophic failure.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like you are blanking, or worse, that you are incompetent. The sheer panic sets in, and the instinct is to just start making noises.
You start rambling.
You ramble or you start thinking out loud in a really disjointed way, simply to fill the dead air so you don't look foolish.
Because the silence feels incredibly loud. You feel like the job offer is just slipping further away with every second you don't have words coming out of your mouth.
But here's the critical secret about U.S. and European interview culture. A deliberate, unhurried pause before answering is actually perceived as a sign of intelligence and seniority.
Wait, taking a pause makes you look better.
It proves you are thinking strategically. It shows the panel that you're actively processing the complexity of their question rather than just rattling off a pre-memorized script.
That's fascinating.
HR professionals and technical leads actually deeply respect a candidate who has the confidence to take a breath and formulate a coherent architectural thought before speaking.
That feels entirely counterintuitive, though. It's the exact opposite of what your adrenaline is screaming at you to do.
Which is why it requires discipline. You have to claim that silence smoothly without looking panicked. In our case study, Mark voices this exact fear to Alex. He asks, "What if they ask me a question and I have to think? I don't want to look unprofessional."
And what does Alex say?
Alex gives him a very specific tactical directive. He tells Mark to buy yourself some time.
And the sources provide the exact phrase to use to execute that tactic, right?
Yes, that's a stellar question.
That's a stellar question.
Mm.
Okay, let's break down why deploying that specific phrase works so well.
Well, our sources note that stellar carries the meaning of outstanding or excellent. But strategically, using stellar makes you immediately stand out from the endless conveyor belt of candidates who just reflexively say, "Oh, that's a good question."
Yeah, good question is almost invisible. It's pure filler.
It really is. But saying, "That's a stellar question," accomplishes three distinct things simultaneously.
Okay, what are they?
First, it subtly flatters the interviewer's intelligence. You're acknowledging they asked something insightful. Second, the use of slightly elevated vocabulary, like stellar, makes your English sound natural, confident, and fluent.
And the third?
The third, and most crucially, is that it takes about 3 to 4 seconds to say at a measured pace. That is 3 to 4 seconds of perfectly acceptable time you just bought for your brain to structure your star response.
You know, I have another technical analogy for this.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
Buying time with, that's a stellar question, operates exactly like an asynchronous function in code.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. Imagine the interviewer's curveball question is this massive data request sent to your server. If you try to process that massive request synchronously, meaning you try to compute the answer and speak at the exact same time, your server just hangs.
Right.
The interviewer gets no response, the screen freezes, and the connection times out. That's the panic. That's the freeze up.
Exactly.
But if you handle it asynchronously, you immediately send a quick, polite, automated response back to the client. You send an HTTP 202 accepted message in the form of, "That's a stellar question."
You do that to keep the connection alive.
Yes, the client, the interviewer, is happy because they know you received the prompt and you're working on it. Meanwhile, your brain gets to process the heavy data in the background without blocking the main thread.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize the tactic.
Yeah.
You aren't failing to answer the question. You are simply managing the connection state between you and the interviewer.
Managing the connection state. I love that.
And consider how this tactic completely transforms the power dynamic of the interview room.
How so?
It shifts the environment from a frantic interrogation where you're this subservient candidate desperately trying to spit out the right answers into a controlled, strategic conversation between two equal professionals. You are actively commanding the pacing of the room.
You aren't just surviving the interview, you are managing the flow of the dialogue.
You are demonstrating the very senior level communication skills they are trying to hire for in the first place.
We have covered incredible ground today. For everyone listening, you now have a comprehensive toolkit designed specifically for this international arena.
You do.
You know how to acknowledge the very real physiological feeling of being terrified, and you have the tools to initiate a mental reboot when the buffer overflows.
You understand the necessity of embracing Western self-marketing. You know to leave the collective modesty at the door and utilize quantifiable I statements to provide factual accuracy about your unique value.
Right. And you know how to leverage the STAR method to ensure every story ends with a concrete business result, proving beyond a doubt that you can deliver the pizza no matter the obstacles.
And finally, when the unscripted curveball comes, you won't panic in the silence. You'll deploy, that's a stellar question, to run an asynchronous process, buying yourself the critical seconds needed to construct a brilliant response.
It is a really robust strategy. But as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
What's that?
We have spent this entire conversation focusing on how to master this confident, structured, outcome-oriented communication simply to pass the interview. We framed it entirely around getting the job.
Right, the immediate pressing goal.
But consider what happens after you sign the offer letter. If you truly internalize this self-marketing language and this structured way of presenting ideas, it doesn't just stop being useful once you clear HR.
Not at all.
Think about how adopting this exact framework might permanently alter the way you advocate for your own code during a really contentious sprint review.
Oh, absolutely.
Or how you might use the STAR method to pitch entirely new architectures to stubborn stakeholders. Or ultimately, how this level of clear, assertive communication will allow you to shape the long-term direction of the products you build once you are actually inside the company.
That is the deeper insight here. Communication isn't just the key that unlocks the door to the role.
Exactly. Communication dictates the limit of your technical influence once you're inside. Because if you cannot communicate your ideas effectively to the broader business, the elegance of your code doesn't matter.
It really doesn't.
So the next time you feel that buffer start to overflow, remember you have the syntax to handle the error. You just have to run the reboot sequence. Keep coding, keep delivering, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.